We're so lucky and happy to have an old friend of mine to talk about what's going on in Europe and specifically in Germany. We just heard from Ben Stevens, our European reporter, and now we get to hear from Jamie Pearson, who, as a consultant, is one of the most informed people on what is going on in Europe and specifically in Germany. And you just came back from the Benzinga conference, Jamie, where you actually moderated a panel on this. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in Germany right now as far as the rollout of their cannabis market.
Thanks, Jimmy, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And, the consultancy firm that I started, the New Holland Group, we really do specialize in helping companies that would like to cross the pond from America to Europe and vice versa. So it is an area that I spend a lot of time in on a daily basis, and I watch it pretty closely. And you know this, but the people watching your podcast may not know this, that my kids are German. I've lived in Germany. I speak German, and I've been going back and forth to Germany for the last 25 years. And then I took Bhang when I was the CEO of Bhang into 9 European countries. So it is definitely a market that I've been involved with a lot. I've spoken at several ICBC events in Berlin and Barcelona. And so I just tell you all of that to let you know that I think it's an exciting market. I have a lot of experience in it, and the movement that's happening is fun to watch. So to answer your question specifically, it all really started last year on April 1st. Germany legalized adult use cannabis, and they did it with a three-phase law. And the first phase did the decriminalization and the social clubs. And when people hear social club, they think of the Barcelona consumption lounges or like WeHo. They're actually not social in nature. They're grow cooperatives. And they can have a maximum of 500 members, and there's limits on everything that they can do. But it was a step in the right direction. It was a way for people over the age of 18 to get access to cannabis and become part of these social clubs. And in conjunction with the decriminalization, it really meant that law enforcement could start focusing on other things because cannabis was going to become ubiquitous because everyone could have it. They could give it, freely back to each other, and it became less of a priority for the police and for law enforcement. So that was phase one. Phase two was more of the commercial element of it, and it's the medical side of things where it was being commercially sold. And people need to understand, in Germany, they did their commercialization of the medical cannabis in a way that was not like we did it here in the US. They integrated it completely into their healthcare system. So you can go to a doctor, you can get a prescription, you go to the pharmacy, and in some cases, about 20% of the cases, you actually can get the health insurance to cover your prescription. Those numbers are climbing because the other part of phase two was they took took cannabis off the narcotics list in Germany.
Right.
And that really made it very easy for physicians to prescribe cannabis as an alternative medicine to start with. So if you were having pain or you were having trouble sleeping, rather than throwing you some sort of an opiate or an Ambien or some sort of an addictive pharmaceutical, the doctors finally had an opportunity to try cannabis as a first resort rather than as the medicine of last resort. That was a huge shift in Germany, and it exploded telemedicine. And what happened also right after that is when we were expecting the third phase to come through, which would have been the adult use pilot programs, the
Right.
government fell apart. And what you basically have over there is a different type of government structure, where here we have a two-party system and you vote for your candidate. Over there, you vote for your party. And then the party that gets 5% of the vote has representation in the parliament. So you have the Green Party and the Right Party and the Left Party and the Christian Democrats and all the different parties, and they all have their own specific agenda that they're trying to push through. So if you voted for the SPD, which is the essentially center left party that was the one that fell apart,
Yep.
They were responsible and cannabis was their agenda and they're about it and they were pushing this through really really solidly. But then the CDU took over, the Christian Democrats, which is the center right. And the one thing they did that was really I would say I was glad about from over here was watching that when it was time to form the coalition. So all these groups that get at least 5%, they have to form a coalition to govern and they have to have more than 50% of the vote. Um, 20% of the vote went to the Nazi party, the AFD party, and the Christian Democrats, the center right, said, we're not forming a coalition with you. And they actually went back to the center left and they formed the coalition. So your government right now is very balanced. And the Christian Democrat Party that's in power, they're really having an agenda about um, immigration, about the economy. It's really kind of mirroring what we've got going on over here. How are we going to pay for all this debt and all of those things? And the SPD said, we will help you on your agenda items, but cannabis has to be left alone. And they came out and said, we're going to leave it alone. And part of that, I believe, is that they have other priorities right now as a government collectively. They've got, the war in Ukraine, energy, all kinds of things that they're worried about. But the reality is, there's probably going to be some change and some shrinkage of that telemedicine program because it's being exploited and there's no question about it. And there was a recent court case that came down on the Dr. Onsai platform. And these are basically just, I would call them the hims and hers of German cannabis. You go to a website, you tell them your ailment. You don't even have to upload an ID. You can have the cannabis delivered to your door. And in those cases, they're generally not covered by insurance. But you can order cannabis and have it delivered to your door, Uber Eats, all, DoorDash, that kind of thing. And so it was getting exploited. And hey, did anybody die? No. So, the reality is it's much ado about nothing. But there is a smell of cannabis everywhere, which, some lawmakers are not a fan of. And the other piece of this is they're not getting tax revenue until we get into the adult use pilot program because they're not going to tax their medical patients. So right now they're not getting addicted to tax revenue and they really aren't going to see any of that revenue come in unless they start with the pilot programs. So I think we're going to see some of that movement, fingers crossed, dust off my crystal ball. But the people in the know seem to think it's going to come, fairly soon. And then here's the thing. The companies in Germany are profitable for the most part. This is a profitable enterprise. Pricing has remained relatively stable. And the part that blows my mind is that the way the German government allowed for import, you can import through the countries that have legal import status, like Colombia, like Australia, like Canada, like Israel. And you, as a buyer selling into the German pharmaceutical, the apotheca, the pharmacies, you can go shop for really good quality cannabis at a really cheap price. And the German cannabis that is being sold through the medical program is significantly cheaper than the illicit market cannabis, which is mind blowing to me. So now, as a consumer, I would get lab tested and clean cannabis from my local drugstore, not from the plug on the corner, and that might be laced with fentanyl or might be oregano or whatever. You actually know that what you're getting is a decent product.
Right.
Is it perfect? It's not perfect. There are issues. There's issues with the radiation. There's issues, they're just like every brand new cannabis industry. But what I'll say is it's been really interesting watching a completely different model because by and large in the US, it always followed a pattern, which was a race to the bottom.
Right.
First it was hold your nose, make the rules, more demand than they anticipated. And then the demand gets met. They get addicted to the tax revenue. They open it all up. Then there's a glut of supply, and then everyone's selling, undercutting each other because they need the cash. And we just see that happening in every single market over and over again.
Right.
That's not what's happening in Europe. It's a completely different ballgame, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and one of the words you used to describe the scene in Germany was the uncertainty. Well, we certainly have uncertainty over here in the United States, even though we've had a more robust adult use program over the last 5, 6 years. What are the lessons learned from Germany that perhaps the US could mimic or learn from?
I know this is going to be controversial, but I personally think what Germany got right was they allow home grow.
Yeah.
That was part of phase one. And one of my clients is a big Barcelona seed company called Blimburn Seeds. And I've learned a lot about the genetics and the seed game in working with Blimburn. And what we've watched is that the explosion of people who want to grow a single plant, who want to know what's going in their cannabis, that want to have that certainty. And it's not putting a dent in the market at all. It's just giving another option, which what I think the effect of that is basically that there's more cannabis in the market and there's more people using cannabis in the market, but they're doing it with certainty because they know what they're doing with the plant that they're growing.
Right.
And so I think that's really cool. And it's always disheartening to me in the US to see markets not allow home grow, thinking that it's going to cannibalize, um, the markets that are the industry that's springing up. But what I always liken it to is there are people that like to brew their own beer, but
Mhm.
they're certainly not making any dent on what's happening in the beer market in the United States, right?
Right, right.
It's that cottage industry type thing, and it's really robust and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, and let's get back to the US because one of the biggest issues that I'm learning about now is this battle, if you will, between the MJ people and the hemp people. I don't like using the real M word. I like MJ and the hemp world. And 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 again, you've got an underregulated and an overregulated. And our politicians and lawmakers were right in the middle of this, and they have totally screwed it up. And now they're looking for the industry to figure out the right way to get it done. So, my question to you is how can both sides of the same plant in this country get together and find common ground, find the right way? And is the States Act 2.0 the answer? That's a big question for you.
A big question. Also controversial, but my opinion, I think it's one plant.
Yep.
I think that in all of the years that I've been in cannabis, we've had to parallel process different scenarios that play out in your head. If this happens, then that's going to happen. And if regulators do this, then we're going to do that. What's going to happen if there's ever federal legalization? And so when I was running Bang, I was thinking about we're trying to expand, the brand across state lines, across nation borders. Well, the question is, if I have to manufacture the product I sell in each individual state, that means I have to have 50 different manufacturing facilities theoretically in that scenario.
Yep.
It would be much easier to have one manufacturing facility and ship it over all those state lines. And
Right.
so when you're sitting there saying, "Ooh, is there a way for me to maybe buy a machine and move the machine around? Because if we go federally legal, I don't want to have 50 machines that I got to get rid of." And so you're constantly, as an executive, having to make decisions around the uncertainty of what regulators are going to do. I
Right.
feel like what happened with hemp and cannabis is there was the farm bill, and there were some really smart people in the hemp industry that said, "Whoa,
Mhm.
I'm gonna see if I'm gonna dip my toe over here in this water and see if I can make some money." And they were like, "Wow, I got banking and I can have marketing and I can put it in the store and I can go cross state lines and I can ship through USPS
Right.
and and I get products shipped to my door. I love it. It's amazing." And I started doing that in COVID anyway with all kinds of things. I became an online shopper
Yep.
during COVID. And so cannabis is no different. And I really love the fact that I can get Delta 9 THC products delivered right to my door. And this is the way I look at it. Whether you're squeezing a lemon or an orange, for the vitamin C that you're eventually going to extract. Vitamin C is vitamin C.
Mhm.
And so to me, THC is THC, Delta 9 THC, Delta 9 THC. So it is one plant.
Right.
And we should not be rivals.
Right.
We should unite because united, we're a more powerful industry.
Yes.
Divided, each side is a niche.
Right. You know my theory that the government knew exactly what they were doing with that farm bill, and they figured this might happen, and it would make it even more difficult for the licensed, regulated, tested industry to survive. And they've made it extremely difficult. And then that tipping point, and we talked about this earlier, when Curaleaf closed their licensed medical facility in Florida to open a hemp store, I said, "Uh-oh,
Here
this
we
is
go.
this is it."
Yeah.
Now we've got issues, and now I'm hearing from the different lobby groups, the MSOs are on one side and the small business are on the other. It all comes down to money and control of that money. And that's what I have the biggest fear of, is that the greediness of a lot of people is going to impact the right way to regulate and make this a more normal existence in this country. Whether it's legal or not, it should be decriminalized first anyway. So my question, I guess, is, are you worried? Are you worried that the US is going to screw it up?
I'll tell you honestly, I choose not to live in fear.
Okay.
I just every day I wake up, I put my pants on, one leg at a time, and I do whatever my, task list is for that day.
Yep.
And if I spent a lot of time worried about what the government was going to do, I would have been paralyzed a long time ago. You
Mhm.
have to roll with it.
Right.
And you do have to think about and keep your ear to the ground and be educated. I read as much as I can every single day, just to hear what's happening in all these different markets, and you start to see some trends. And a lot of the trends are some of them are great. One thing that I think people should know in the world that I've been trying to educate people about, and I have no skin in this game whatsoever, no horse in the race, but people need to be talking about the fact that there's a company in cannabis right now called Leafwell,
Yeah.
and Leafwell has 1 million unique visitors to their website every month. They have 500,000 members, and through their metadata
Hmm.
studies that they've published, 9 of them, they have successfully negotiated with Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna to provide medical cannabis consultations for free to the New Jersey Teachers Union, and plus give a 30% off coupon for the specific New Jersey dispensaries that are participating in the Leaf Well program. Why are we not talking about that? That's so huge.
Right.
And that to me is sort of mimicking what's happening in Germany. I think what happened in America is we put air quotes around medical. We were trying to give, sick people with AIDS and wasting syndrome
Hmm.
access to the plant. And so we created this parallel medical system. And great. I mean, it worked. We got a lot of sick people help, and we have so many people now. Almost all Americans wake up with some form of cannabinoid that they have access to. But we lost our way in the medical side of things, really educating the doctors and, because think about cannabinoids can interact with, benzodiazepine style medicine. We need to know these things. Medical schools need to be teaching it. Pharmacology needs to include the cannabinoid system,
Right.
and these substances. And I think what we've been pushing is for adult use. And with that, you have this explosion of hemp beverages. I'm for all of it. I'm for all business. And it's not necessarily that I think everybody's greedy. I think that we're pulling something that all humans should have access to, and we're giving humans access to it. And lo and behold, nothing bad is happening. I mean, not there are things that happen. There's bad effects everywhere, but I will say that drinking and driving has gone down, and domestic violence has gone down, and the onset use of teenagers, the age is going up, and we're seeing the benefits of this plant and the older demographic having some cognitive benefit and having some neurological protection benefit from CBD. We don't know shit about this plant because we've not been able to do the research.
Right.
They've done tons of it in Israel. They've done tons of it in Canada. But we're still, even with all that done, we're at our infancy. But what LeafWell figured out is when large employer organizations provide cannabis medicine to their, or allow for cannabis medicine to be provided as an alternative to pharmaceuticals, absenteeism goes down, wellness goes up, the use of opiates goes down. And these statistics are not a 33-person study like just hit the news waves about cannabis causes cardiac problem. Bullshit. You did a 33-person study and you didn't even look at you looked at the correlative and not at the causational. Right. These studies these are good studies and they have huge numbers of patients. We need to be getting that word out. Right. That's what I think. I think all this fighting about money and hemp and cannabis and whatever, all of us, how do we unite? We unite in the fact that we all believe that human beings need to have access to this plant.
Right. God put it on this earth for a reason, to help humans. He created humans, or she,
He did.
Whatever, he, she, the great one, the great thing, right? We all are in agreement on that. Jamie, I could sit here and talk to you for hours about this because I love your insight on this industry. I love your attitude about it too. And a lot of respect on a lot of fronts. So thank you for taking the time that you did tonight away from your regular routine. And as you know, you're always welcome anytime that I'm doing anything and you need an audience. At least now we've got a decent sized audience that's following our Cannabis Coast to Coast news show. So you're welcome here anytime.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Elena Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Elena Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.